Hey everyone, this is Jake from Fife Paranormal, and I hope everyone is doing well early in 2021. And in this video, I'm going to talk about 3 projects that I want to make this year. 3 documentary projects that I hope to make this year, I should say. So last year, I filmed and released my very first, and so far only, paranormal documentary, the Roundhouse documentary, which that's a lot of time saying documentary in 1 minute, but it was a fun project to work on. It was my very first time kind of balancing paranormal aspect of it, historical aspect, and then introducing the filmmaking element into it. And I was happy with how it turned out, but looking back on it now, there are so many things that I could have done differently, so many things I could have done better. So in 2021, my goal is to release 5 paranormal / historical documentaries, but right now I've only got 3 mapped out right now. The other 2 I'm not 100% sure on. I always have tons of ideas, looking at locations, historical places, figures in history that I would love to do a full-on documentary about. And when I mean documentary, I'm talking about over an hour and 15 minutes long. Basically kind of like our Roundhouse one. And so I'm going to talk about a few of those projects that I hope to work on. The very first one is one that I've wanted to make for a very, very long time, and I was hoping to make this in 2020, but because of the virus and stuff, I wasn't able to, and that is a Matewan Massacre / West Virginia Mine Wars documentary. Now, if you know me, you know that the West Virginia Mine Wars took place basically where I grew up and where I was born. And I've been to a few of the sites where some of the killings and battles happened, and it's the largest armed insurrection since the American Civil War. And there was a lot of really interesting stuff going on in the background, a lot of interesting politics. The military is one of, I think, the only time in American history that the military dropped bombs on, civilians. And so, in a lot of these places, where it's in the coal fields of southern West Virginia, a lot of these places are untouched. They're as they were, back in the 19-teens, 1920s when this all took place. But the main place I wanted to focus on is a place I actually investigated, I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, Matewan, West Virginia, which is, of course, on May 19th, 1920, is where the Matewan Massacre happened, which led to the deaths of about 12 to 13 people. And I would love to go there and do a spirit box session on the grounds of the shootout. I've already filmed at the shootout site, but it'd be cool to investigate it. I'm very good friends with a lot of people in that area, and I think it would be really cool, maybe set something up to investigate some of the buildings, in the area. Like, they have the West Virginia Mine Wars Museum, which they just recently put up their exhibits online, or I think they're in the process of doing that. But check that out. It's going to be really cool. There's a lot of neat history there. Then there's the Replica Depot Museum in Matewan towards the end of town, and I've actually done a spirit box session there when we visited back in 2017, 2018, but I would love to do a full-on investigation at night, have 5 or 6 hours in the building. And then, of course, they recently restored Sid Hatfield's jail, and Sid Hatfield, of course, he was the sheriff of the town when the massacre happened, and he was the one who, some people believe, fired the first 2 shots, but basically he killed Albert and Lee Felds of the Baldwin Felds Detective Agency. And so it'd be really cool to investigate his jail and see if his spirit might be hanging around. And that would be more history than paranormal, since I wouldn't have complete paranormal access to all of the locations. But that would be just a really fun project to do. And I've thought about keeping it, just Matewan-centric, around the massacre and some of the stuff that took place around the town, because there's a lot of history there. Mainly, mine wars, labor movements and stuff like that, and then the Hatfield-McCoy feud. So those would be fun, but I'd like to kind of keep those separate. But if I was to do, an all-out mine wars, there would be about 4 or 5 other locations that I would film at and then hopefully get permission to investigate, because it's been on my bucket list to make this for a very long time, and to visit a lot of these places, so it would be really cool to do that. That one I'm hoping to do either first or second. Right now I've got my 3 projects planned from, around March. I'm hoping to film my first one, and I've only got them planned up till maybe July. So between, mid to late March and July, I'm hoping to have 3 done. It doesn't mean all 3 are going to be released within that time span, but they'll be done. So the second one I want to do is more history slash mystery slash paranormal, but it's Ghost of Guilford is the working title for it right now, or Ghost of Guilford Courthouse. See, I just fixed it right there. But basically, it's going to center around the story of the Battle of Guilford Courthouse, which was fought on March 16, 1781 in Greensboro, North Carolina. Now, the Revolutionary War is my favorite period in history to read about. Even though the Civil War, World War I, World War II, all that stuff, the Revolutionary War is my favorite, especially the Southern Campaign of 1779 through 1781. There was so much going on. It was really complex. You know, you had the Carolinas, mainly South Carolina, basically erupt into a civil war. You know, it was, household against household, Loyalists versus Patriots. I read one time that there were over 130 battles fought in South Carolina alone where there wasn't a single British soldier in fight. It was just backwoods fighting amongst towns, amongst families. And it was, like they said in the historical documentary I watched when I was a kid, it was a hornet's nest that was basically tore open for everyone to see. And I would love to do, the backstory of that campaign, talk about, some of the crazy stuff that happened. There's a lot of incidents that happened during the Southern Campaign. It reads just like stuff out of, like a graphic novel or even like a movie. Like, you think The Patriot, some people say that was a really brutal and violent movie. Oh no, that's tame. Very, very like kindergarten PG tame compared to what really happened in the Southern Campaign. And there's a lot of really interesting characters and personalities that were at play, and I would love to tell that story. Now, of course, the whole campaign, like I said, spanned, almost 3 years, and it took place in 4 or 5 states. So I would have to narrow it down like crazy. And I decided, Guilford Courthouse would be the first one, to do, because that was kind of the culmination of everything. All the personalities, all the crazy events, the battles, the massacres, the executions, it all, came to a boiling point there in this one little area. And there's also a cool mystery to it, too, because, Guilford Courthouse gets its name because the Guilford County Courthouse was right there. And it wasn't like a big courthouse or anything. It was a single story, just, log structure. And I believe there was a tavern nearby. I've read some reports. It was close to the courthouse. But they don't know where it is. Sometime, I believe it was in 1780s or 1790s, the courthouse actually burned. And historians have spent, over 100 and some odd years, 200 years, looking for where Guilford Courthouse, not the camera, but they're looking for where Guilford Courthouse was. And there are a few maps that exist, contemporary maps, from after the battle. There's one, this British engineer, immediately after the battle happened. He was actually in the courthouse with the wounded and all that stuff, and he sketched out a map and all that stuff of what it looked like, the terrain. And I would just love to use my knowledge of the battle, of the grounds, and all that stuff, because I've studied Guilford Courthouse. Let's see. I first visited the battlefield when I was like 6 or 7 years old, and ever since then, I just, that's my favorite battlefield to investigate, that I've ever been to. There's just something about Guilford Courthouse that just keeps calling me back, and I can never get enough of it. But I've studied every aspect of it, in crazy detail. And so I would love to use my knowledge of the place and also the spirit box, EVP, and stuff like that to see if I could find the courthouse. I think it'd be cool, just close to where the American Third Line was, which is where some really savage hand-to-hand fighting took place. And, there's a lot, I've read some of the accounts, and it was just brutal stuff that was happening there. It got so bad that British General Charles Cornwallis was firing grape shot from his cannons into his own men, because it was just basically like this big mosh pit of just people just, clawing at each other, clawing their eyes out, choking people to death, stabbing with bayonets. Cavalry got involved with sabers and, shotgun. It was a mess. But according to accounts, close to where that took place is where the courthouse was. So I would love to be there, just ask the spirits, where was the courthouse, and just have them lead me there. That would be really cool. And of course, that would be, like I said, more historical, telling about, leading up to the battle itself. And then, as I go to each place, because I'm thinking about doing, first line, telling the story, investigating. Go to the second line, tell the story, investigating. Go to the third line, tell the story of, what happened there, the courthouse, and then investigate it. And then, of course, there was separate action about a mile or so south of that. Yeah, I think it's south, near where modern-day Greensboro Park is, and I would tell the story and investigate that, because, some of my favorite characters of the American Revolutionary War to study, that's where they fought in the battle, and also that's where my ancestors were. They were part of the first line with the Virginia militia, and so it'd be kind of cool to retrace their steps. But that's the one, out of all the ones that I've got planned so far, I'm most excited for that one. Sorry, since I haven't been to the battlefield, I think it's like 7 or 8 years since I've last been. And then the third and final documentary that I have outlined, ready to shoot and all that stuff, is Bigfoot. Or more specifically, West Virginia Bigfoot. Now, I've talked about some of my Bigfoot experiences on this channel before. And I can't tell you how many people have contacted me saying, hey, I've had this encounter. Hey, I saw this. Hey, I heard this. Especially from back home, my hometown. And I would love to go back into southern West Virginia, just spend a week. Just going out to these different places, interviewing people that, avid hunters that are seeing these strange creatures in the woods, and then, maybe investigating. Now, I will be honest, I have never investigated Bigfoot before. And, watching Finding Bigfoot and seeing some other teams on YouTube investigate I've learned a little bit, but, it would definitely be learning as I go how to investigate Bigfoot, because, investigating a living creature like that is, very, very different than investigating, a spirit, essentially a dead person. And so that would be kind of fun, to navigate that, especially on camera. I'm sure there'd be a lot of funny moments, especially, me trying to, do Bigfoot calls, which I can do Bigfoot calls. It's just, it would be a lot of fun to do, and also be going back to my hometown, going to places that I haven't been to in many years, talking to people I haven't seen in years. So that would be a really fun documentary to make. And plus, who knows, I might stumble upon Bigfoot. Which, I'll be honest with you, if I stumbled across Bigfoot, I have no idea what I would do, aside from, point the camera, make sure it's in focus. That would be the number one thing for me is, make sure the camera is in focus. I will have no blurry Bigfoot photos. I will not have any of that crap. I can guarantee that one. I have a very fast shutter speed on this camera. I've got it set low here, but I don't think Bigfoot can outrun my camera. But those are the 3 documentaries that I have outlined so far that I want to film. And like I said, there's 2 more after that between late July and November that I want to film and release ideally. Now, who knows what 2021 has in store with the pandemic and stuff like that. Plans can change, and I might have to spread these 3 documentaries out over the course of a year. And something, that people have talked to me about, they're like, it usually takes people 6 months to a year to not just put together a documentary, a good documentary, but to also film it, edit it, release it, market it, stuff like that. And they're like, you have kind of like an assembly line, you just do it real quick. And, do you feel like your quality suffers for that? And I do think it is possible that I am losing some quality, or as I should say, I'm not getting everything that I could potentially be getting if I did have a crew with me. Because, typically when I'm doing these projects, it's just me and one other person. There's just, 2 of us. The Roundhouse, it was just me and Caitlin, but I operated the camera, 95% of the time that we were there. So it's interesting because, when I go into these projects, whether it's a documentary, a paranormal investigation episode, or something like that, I have a very detailed list in my mind of how it needs to work. And, typically, I've studied, if I want to make movies one day, they say, have a shot list, have a script, have like, a physical booklet that people can see, people can refer to. And that is something I do need to do. I need to be a lot better about that. But I'm the kind of person, kind of like Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys in the 60s, they were asking him how he comes up with his melodies and such great lyrics, and he said, I hear it in my head. I see how everything should be in my head. And, that's kind of how I operate. Not saying that's right or that's wrong. There's a lot of drawbacks to that, and I do need to stop doing that to the extent that I do it, but I truly do see all of these projects in my head, and when I'm working on them, I'm like, I kind of refer back to my brain. It's almost like you're watching a video and it's like, hey, how does that need to look? So I rewind it in my head and I just play it through. So there are a lot of better ways that I could do that, but the more you do something, the better you get at it. So I'm very curious to see how, by the end of this year, first off, what documentaries I've filmed and released, and then also how the quality of them compares to, the Roundhouse, which was my first one and was released in September of 2020. So thank you all for watching this video. Which documentary project are you most excited, for me to film? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and if you can think of any location, any subject, whether it's paranormal history or cryptids, that you would like to see us do a documentary on, let us know. Either comment below or privately message us. And one more thing I want to add before I end this video. We're not going to make a documentary out of every investigation we do. So, me saying, I'm going to do these 3 things, that doesn't mean that for 2021, that's the only 3 things Fife Paranormal is doing. We do have the Fife Files, which is our investigation series, which I'm going to be resuming filming for season 2, probably next week or something like that. But, I've got regular investigation stuff. That's not an episode, not a documentary. We've got the Fife Files, so there's going to be a lot of content there. It's just, I only make a documentary, that's a very, very special project. That's not something that I edit the same as my other stuff, or I hold it in the same regard as my other stuff. But once again, I'm Jake from Fife Paranormal. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And I hope you all have a great day.